It's time for AggroChat, the official podcast of the Tales of the Agronaut blog and stalwart gaming community, where we talk about stuff and things, and the stuff about the things, and sometimes gaming. I'm Belghast, and let's start the show. Hey folks, it's that time again. Time for another episode of AggroChat. This is episode 465. Tonight I'm joined by Ammo.
Hello.
Ashgar.
Isn't it really 464 part 2?
I mean, sure. Grace.
Hi.
Kodra.
Hello.
Tam.
Hello.
And Thalen.
Hey.
Yeah, I mean, so this is a numerically significant different show, but it is the second part of our Games of the Year show.
But previously, the Games of the Year show would get split up, but we wouldn't count them as two separate numbers.
I think we did last year.
Are you telling me that
last year we split them up?
Yeah.
Are you telling me that we're introducing inconsistency into our arbitrary numbering system?
Yeah, no. we are on season 11, but episode 465.
Pretty soon we'll be making Mortal Kombat 1.
Yeah, I mean, you could either go for, sequential numbering or seasonal numbering, but I decided to do both. Anyway,
episode X2.
We technically have a shorter list tonight than we had last week, but I think some of these may be longer topics, because they also include the one that a lot of people chose. So we'll see how it goes. Tam, I believe this one's yours. I was a teenage exocolonist.
This game is incredible. I'm always interested in finding games that are either doing something really interesting with the medium or telling really interesting stories. And not every game is that, nor does every game have to be that. I am perfectly happy to have a run-of-the-mill solid game to play. But Gone Home, Citizen Sleeper, Disco Elysium, I was a teenage exocolonist. These games really stand out to me because they are doing something really, really interesting with their storytelling. And so the core conceit of the game, which I've talked about briefly, but what makes it really clever to me is it is a perfectly reasonable, if somewhat sad, game on the first playthrough.
Mm-hmm.
And it hints at other things that are going on, but you don't necessarily have to explore them all. And you'll probably get to a place where you're like, there's more here that I didn't do. And the moment you go back, you can change things. And the layers of this that you can unpeel and the feeling that it captures, because a lot of times, if you play New Game Plus, the game is very much about New Game Plus, I think one of the only games that I've seen that really leans into here are things you can't do on your first playthrough, but on your second you can, is Persona, and they don't matter. They're it's kind of fun to have your, academics high enough to answer a teacher's question in the first week, and everybody thinks you're cool. But it doesn't really materially make a difference in your playthrough. It's just haha, I feel cool. Whereas you hit this point where you are basically informed by the actions that you've taken in your previous playthroughs, and that helps you sculpt the experience, and it's so cool.
This is very much a one more day sort of game.
Sorry again? Sorry.
Oh, sorry. This is very much I just need to play one more day kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's just it's charming. It's thoughtful. It actually it takes on some difficult concepts and handles them with grace. I love it.
It has a very extensive list of trigger warning tags that should definitely be looked at if you're considering going into it. But it's certainly worth it if you give it a try. It's also a very gorgeous style too.
Yeah, it's got a great vaguely wilder myth art style that I really love the art style. It works super well with what it's doing. And it's got a great cast of characters, all of whom are worth your time. Like, it does a super good job of giving me characters who have character arcs, even if I hate them initially. Which, man, that's hard to do. First impressions make a big... Ask any DM. First impressions are everything. Mm-hmm. You can totally ruin your party's opinion of a character by botching their intro. Rehabilitating a character that you dislike instantly is next to impossible, and they can do it, and they can make it work.
Is it because like you have an opportunity to like play through with them being a fresh character and they introduce themselves in a different way?
No. One of the characters is an out and out fascist, and you can get him to go to therapy and work through his problems. At which point he's great. He's actually because he's a kid. Like, he's not so far gone that he's irredeemable.
Yeah.
And that's important to the storytelling. But you can also just ignore him. Be like, no, that guy sucks. I'm not going to deal with him. And that's a choice you can make. But if you choose to engage, you can go all kinds of directions. Because you can also send him to his death. But you get the chance to play through all of the different character arcs. And I appreciate that it's like, you know, I might interact with this person on behalf of somebody else who I like, so that they can't mess with them. But also, in so doing, you find out more about ways you can approach this problem and these people, and like it's all intertwined. Like, it's not like, oh, he was born a fascist, he will always be a fascist, he's a terrible person. That could be absent another reasonable option being provided. But there are people whose fault that is. You get out of it what you put into it, and I think that's really cool.
Super Mario RPG, the remake.
It's 1996 again?
Yep.
Apparently.
Look, because I'm an old man fueled by nostalgia, apparently I have a theme this year, and it's games from the 90s. But yeah.
Reborn. Games from the 90s.
Games from the 90s, remade and beautiful. And yeah, Super Mario RPG. It got remade, which I never thought would happen. So you could actually play it again. And it's really good. And I had a lot of fun with it. And it got extra points with me because my 6-year-old son, who is obsessed with Mario, latched onto it and played it to completion. So it's his first JRPG. And that's great.
That's awesome. Also, like, Super Mario RPG, man, I'm gonna make a controversial statement. Super Mario RPG might be one of, is definitely one of, and might be the best game of the Super Nintendo era.
It's way up there.
I don't agree with you, but I understand how you got here.
Yeah, like, I mean, it is one of the best games of the Super Nintendo era.
Yeah. Like, it is absolutely one of the best games of the Super Nintendo era.
But it was like this whole monkey's paw moment when Square and Nintendo decided to do a thing together, equal parts, and it worked.
For anyone unfamiliar with why this game has been maybe a bit long coming in terms of remakes, so Nintendo obviously owns Mario and all of the various Mario things. Square owns the original characters from this game, Gino and Mallow. So some agreement has to occur whenever they appear in anything.
Yep.
So it seemed like this was never, ever going to happen. Because, like, even Gino appears briefly as a cameo in the first Mario and Luigi game. He's not in the remake of that game. And even in the credits for the first game, like, he's got this whole line that's just, like, property of Square Enix, so on and so forth. Agreements with these characters have been difficult.
Well, and the other piece of this that, like, folks may or may not remember, but there was a not insignificant falling out between Nintendo and Square Enix during the Nintendo 64 era. Like, they went to the PlayStation because they didn't want to make cartridge games.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted to make CD games so they could keep expanding the size of them. And I think there was a lot of bad blood there as a result.
Yeah, because up till like Final Fantasy VII, that was a Nintendo franchise.
Yeah. I mean, between Nintendo Mobile and Nintendo mainline consoles, it was that was where Square was at. And then the PlayStation happened, and they had the ability to swap CDs. So,
But yeah, no, I'm glad Nintendo and Square have apparently worked things out and have realized that people want to give them money for older stuff and are actually taking advantage of that now.
Square's been taking advantage of that for a while.
They have.
is there a platform Square would like to sell you something for it? So I just modified the order a little bit since we were talking about 90s games. Bolt Gun is a game I threw on as an honorable mention, and it wasn't a 90s game, but it most certainly feels like it should have been. Bolt Gun is this weird nostalgia trip for me because when I was playing Doom, I was also playing a lot of Warhammer 40K. And this game is, in the genre that folks lovingly refer to as boomer shooters. It's basically what if Doom were Space Marines, like actual Space Marines, not the UAC kind. And it plays like your memories of those games. Like it plays much better than those games actually did. But
you aim up and down.
You have true mouse look. But there's a lot of things going on with this game. Like, first of all, like it's really cool that it's this loving render of like what the world would have looked like if there had been a game other than Space Hulk during the Doom era. This is the game that probably should have existed, and combat's really good. It's super fast paced. You have all of the Space Marine weapons you would ever want to do. You have flamers and plasma guns and all sorts of Hellfire bolter type scenarios that you can snap onto your Mars pattern bolter. It's a really good Doom clone, but also it lives in this weird uncanny valley where this game exists in the primary chronology of the Space Marine game that came out in 2010-ish, I think. And the new one that's about to come out this year, I believe, this game sits between them. So this is after the events of the Space Marine action combat shooter game, third-person game. And, at the end of this is where the new Space Marine game is going to pick up. So, yeah, I mean, like, it's a fun romp, kill lots of Space Marines. It has some lovingly rendered nurglings and stuff like that, in very much Doom style graphics. It's pretty short, but it's a fun game.
Yeah, it sounds interesting. I've actually just finished watching. Is it good controls, or does it feel like 90 controls?
I play with mouse and keyboard. Like it feels great control wise. Like
it's mouse look and all of that.
Mouse look and all that. You can do some weird jump tricks to get to places that you wouldn't ever be able to get to in those type of games. It is modern control scheme, 90s graphics, but like they're better than 90s graphics. It's like all of the games that are coming out right now from the indie scene that people call 16-bit graphics that look way better than 16-bit graphics ever did in the day. It's that same kind of thing. No one's dealing with sprite sheet swapping in the way that they did on those consoles. But yeah, it's a really cool game. Like, I think it was really cheap too, even when it first came out. But if you want to play a 90s shooter, it's a great experience. Star Ocean Second Story R.
This is technically a 90s game.
That's true. That's true. So I didn't expect last year for a Star Ocean game to be on one of my top picks last year. And imagine my surprise that there's another one on this year's list, but here we are. This is a remake of Star Ocean Second Story, which was on the PlayStation, but has been remastered, so it's a very gorgeous 2.5D style now. It's a very pretty remake. They've even rearranged and recomposed the soundtrack. You can pick between the original and the new version. It's got new character illustrations. But as for the game itself, it's kind of it's a very nostalgic game, and kind of like always been sort of an important game for like my husband and I, because we were both playing it when we met way back when, and it came out at a very good and difficult time for us last year, so we had a lot of time to sit down and play together. So it's a meaningful game for us in some ways, but the new release is very nice. It's gorgeous. Star Ocean 2 is kind of referred to as one of the better Star Ocean games by most people. It got one of the bigger stories, one of the larger cast of unusual and sometimes eccentric characters. This one also, multiple playthroughs is nice because you can pick one of two protagonists, and some party members can only be recruited when others are not, and so on and so forth. And also, each protagonist has like one unique character that you can't recruit on the other's playthrough. This was the first time I've actually played it with like voice cutscenes, because the PS1 version did not have that. It was added in the PSP version's second evolution, which I did not play. So that was kind of a strange thing for me. But it was nice. They also cleaned up the localization during the second evolution version, which I thought really helped the experience a lot.
I was gonna ask, it's more like a standard JRPG, right?
Yes.
Yes, sort of.
Well, yeah,
Combat is not turn-based.
Yeah, no, it's not turn-based. This one is even, I think, a little more action-y focused, but yeah, I think even the original was kind of like RPG, but with a little bit of action. It's like kind of maybe closer to some of the Tales games in a way, except I haven't like played a ton of those, so I'm just kind of loosely. I've only played like Arise and Xillia, but it's a nice mix of sci-fi and fantasy. A lot of it takes place on a fantasy world, so that's probably one of my biggest hooks for Star Ocean games is the mix of sci-fi and fantasy.
Yeah, the setting kind of reminded me like of a Phantasy Star game kind of thing.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. But it's a lot of fun. I really like the cleaned up localization, and again, it's not a super deep story, but it has some really emotional moments if you allow yourself to really kind of get into it, and just it's probably one of, I think it is like my favorite Star Ocean cast of characters in general. Some are more interesting than others, but it's definitely up there for cast compared to some of the other ones. They added they added fishing, which I guess, people are excited about fishing. That was kind of funny. They one change in the combat they made is you can kind of equip you have your standard 4-character party, but you can kind of equip your other characters to come in and do like side attacks to kind of buff your team, or just do a big attack to the enemy. So that was kind of a neat thing. And one of the things you can unlock as you go out through the game is crystals, which are basically protagonists from the other Star Ocean games, to use as these auxiliary characters that you can equip to like help you in combat, which I thought was a really very nice touch.
I just got this one for Christmas, and so have not gotten very deep into it. But I do find it funny that it is definitely a theme for most Star Ocean games that the very first thing you do, if you are a interstellar traveler, is violate the Prime Directive.
Yep. Absolutely.
Every time.
Yep. Which
is what makes Star Ocean 6 pretty unique, is like you're not playing as a member of the Federation, so you don't really care that you did that. You just they kind of turn things on their head a little bit with 6, but that was last year's pick. But anyways, yeah, that's pretty much how a Star Ocean game starts out. But I would actually recommend playing the Claude side first and the Rena side. Like, they're both fine. It's just they're there are definitely things that happen that make more sense when you're playing through as Claude, and then when the stuff happens as Rena, you're like, oh, okay, that was that. But yeah, great game, beautiful. I love it a lot. Good nostalgia. Just my husband and I packed a lot of hours into it in November, and it was good times. I really love it.
I really gotta play a Star Ocean game at some point. It's been on my list forever.
This is the only one I've played.
This would probably be one of the best ones then.
Yeah, like I've not played this version, but I played it on the PlayStation back in the day, and this was the first time I had experienced anything Star Ocean.
This is the first one we got in the States.
Oh, and I also have to mention the private actions that your characters can do when you're a city. It is definitely well worth your time to seek these out, and they make it a lot easier in this game for you to know if there's a private action. So they're just like they're like the skits in the Tales of games where just interactions with your party members. Some are yeah. They can affect your relationships with your party members. Some are interesting, some are hilarious. Definitely good to seek them out.
Are these like the actions in Three Houses where it's like, hey, there's going to be an interaction between these two NPCs?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a nice way to flesh out like the characters and how they interact with each other instead of just with you, the protagonist.
Mm-hmm. The Bravely Default games kind of have something like that going on too. That's except for in that case, it's skippable.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to go do the private actions, but you probably should. But yeah, if you're curious about a Star Ocean game, or you're curious about Star Ocean 2 in particular, this would definitely be the version to pick up, and probably one of the better Star Ocean games to pick for your first one.
Jedi Survivor.
Man, that this is a honorable mention for me speaks volumes about how good this year was in general. Like Jedi or Fallen Order was a great game, and like it was a great game on a number of levels, and it's cool to see. And it's like there's a very real possibility that it was a one and done. Like there was just not going to be a game. They were not going to be able to make a follow-up that was doing something good or interesting. And Jedi Survivor absolutely does. Like it builds on the first game in an interesting way without just totally invalidating it.
Right.
And like it doesn't use the same beats, but also like it needed to not.
Well, the thing that I always hate about sequels to games where you go through a Metroidvania sequence of ability gains is usually they throw you back to square one and create some sort of hand-wavy reason why you don't have any of the stuff that you had previously.
Mm-hmm. Most of them don't even do that.
This game doesn't do that. Like,
yeah,
you have all of your like, you're a Jedi Knight, at least, if not Master, at this point, and you have all the stuff that you had in the last game. Like, all those traversal options are still there, but they're still adding pieces to the puzzle. So all of the stuff that you learned in game one is still 100% important, but also they spend time reintroducing you to them and adding layers on top of that.
Yeah. It's the other, so like I think that as far as pure incredible moments, Fallen Order has Survivor beaten. Mostly because there is a moment in the finale of Fallen Order that is one of the coolest, most powerful moments I have had in a video game. And hoping that Jedi Survivor could come close to topping that is unrealistic. There's no way. You cannot beat that moment. It's so perfect.
Well, but like Jedi Survivor is trying to do a bunch of different things, and to some extent, I think a lot of them work really well, and some of them don't work as well. Like Fallen Order was a very tight game, and it was a lean experience. There wasn't a lot of fluff in it. And this game kind of did the Witcher 3 thing where there's just like so much content. And like if you're into it, I'm sure you love it. To me, like narratively, I felt like Fallen Order was just a tighter experience, but that's not to take anything away from, like, this was a really great game. I think I just kind of like the first one a little bit better.
Yeah, and I think that I ultimately like the first one a little bit better, and I, you know, the first one did make my list the year it came out, whereas this one is an honorable mention. But it's a real close honorable mention because of the thing that Belle was saying, where they don't hit the reset button on you, but it also doesn't feel bloated. I did not feel like I was drowning in extraneous random extra abilities that were filler. Everything they added felt like it made sense, and I thought that was really good. And it's so hard to do.
Both of these games do something that's really hard to do, where you just feel overwhelmingly competent because you can string together a sequence of moves that at face value aren't that hard, but it's just there's a lot of stuff to go, and it does a really good job of resetting you very close to the fail point if you botch something.
Yeah. I have not played a video game that more successfully makes me feel like a Jedi. Like, this totally perfectly captures the feeling of being a Jedi in a way that, like, I mean, even KOTOR doesn't quite manage. And I love KOTOR games.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the Jedi game. Like, I'm speaking collectively as the pair of games, but this is the Jedi game I always wanted as a kid.
Yes.
Like, that Kyle Katarn never really turned into. Like, you know, Dark Forces games were cool, and the Jedi Knight series was cool, but it wasn't quite like this.
Kyle never should have been a Jedi.
No. In the games I never thought would show up on this list department, it's, 2004 again. City of Heroes.
Yep. This one ended up in a honorable mention for me, and it's, I guess technically it's, this month I started playing it and got, half of you playing it. But it's been around for a while back, and I feel like it deserves to be on the list mostly because this game actually was that good.
It really was, and that's the piece that I've found most interesting about diving back into it is it still feels like my memories felt. Like, this game was really evolved for its time, and it also marks a path that wasn't taken.
Like, it's so easy to remember a game fondly and remember how good it felt at the time, but is that still a good game 20 years later? And no, it still feels fun to fly around and beat up Clockwork and devouring Earth and such.
Hey, that's the piece that just floors me going through this, is how good the different faction and individual enemy designs are. Like, I remembered really enjoying fighting specific factions, but like, I had forgotten just how good the different archetypes within the enemy factions are.
Mm-hmm.
And how wildly different they behave as compared to, random foot soldier.
Yeah, there are very few fights in this game, particularly once you've gotten past, level 10 or 15 or so, where you just roll up and beat some dudes up without thinking about it.
Yeah, you kind of have to strategize. You need to look at, okay, what classes basically are represented in these enemies? Which one do I need to deal with first? Do I need to CC something? Do I need to try and pull one out?
It's like, oh, there's a death shaman. I need to immobilize him, or I'm going to be drowning in zombies.
Right. It's like every street corner is a pull puzzle.
Yeah, I do think it's interesting how much we have moved away from, like, we have moved towards it doesn't matter what's in the pack as long as you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, you'll be fine.
Mm-hmm.
And it does kind of flatten the enemy design.
Well, and in
In a
the
lot of
last
games.
time we really had that was TBC in the WoW era, and then anything
And even
after that,
like,
That was flatter than this, but it's still way less flat than everything
right,
became.
right,
Yeah.
yeah.
But
It's
yeah.
like I think about vanilla WoW, and it's like, yeah, okay, I'm fighting Scarlets versus I'm fighting Undead, and like, there's
Yeah.
some difference there,
Well,
but
I mean, CC mattered back then, and CC matters for certain in City of Heroes, but
I have an
CC
entire
doesn't
conversation
matter at
about that.
all anymore.
I have an entire conversation about that we'll probably hear next week.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's
I mean-
it's definitely interesting playing an MMO where CC and positioning of opponents really matters.
It's also really wild to see how different character sets interact with each other.
Mm-hmm.
We did our first Strike Force, and wow, that was funny. Like, oh man, having access to somebody who can CC, like really hard CC stuff, while I'm here being a blaster, usually just trying to like DPS things down before they get to me, really puts things into perspective.
Yeah, they can't get to you if they're immobilized.
Yeah. And like, oh, there's one annoying thing in this pack. Cool. I will deal with it. I have a button that says if I can use this button on a boss if I am not in combat, and it will take like half their health away.
and that's okay because the encounter design is built to accept
Yeah.
that. Yeah, sometimes you are just going to melt that one guy.
Yeah, it's totally fine for you to be able to melt this guy. He's never the only thing there.
I think it might stand up better now than it did originally.
Weird to think about.
Just because it's kind of unique amongst its market.
Well, I think because it was a bit ahead of its time for starters, but also it's not. There's a bunch of stuff that it's not trying to do, like get money out of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
So it doesn't.
It was
it can,
developed
it
in
can
the
move at a
subscription
pace
era.
that feels good and that you have control over.
There are some. I changed one of my character's alignments today, which is a thing that was not the same as it was on live, because on live it was designed to be a long, slow process because they did want to milk you for your subscription.
Yeah, which you can still do if you want to. You can go through the long, slow process. That's still there. Or you can talk to a bird.
No, what I'm saying is I went through that process.
Oh, okay.
But you can do it. You can do it very, very quickly.
It's not limited.
It's not time locked anymore.
Time locked, yeah. Yeah, I think they removed time locks on a bunch of stuff. But also, if even that is too slow, you can just go talk to a bird.
It's true.
And there's a lot of stuff that they just made a lot more available, or there are things that were in the cash shop when the game did go free to play, because it did eventually, towards the end of its life, that they're just freely available to everyone. Like all the power pools that have like 2 different travel options in them and some attacks, those were all cash shop things. That's why those exist. So like sorcery and I forget the others.
I think those are actually post. I think those are issue 25 content. I think that's like one of the first pieces of homebrew content.
I'm pretty sure those were like, I could be wrong. They might have been planned for the cash shop. That's also possible.
But yes, I do like getting to sort of know a faction's enemy types and knowing like what they're doing and what I need to be afraid of. And oh man, do I not like Clockwork because I kill the big thing and then a whole bunch of small things come out and I don't have good AoE.
See, I love Clockwork because I kill the big thing and then all the small things come out and I just drop an AoE hold on them and they die.
Yeah, yep. There are strengths and weaknesses. There are strengths and weaknesses to everyone.
Usually they're tight enough that I can get them in either my frontal cone or my AoE.
I'm playing a class that has an AoE Confuse, which is just as busted as it sounds. It's actually really silly.
I mean, this is a thing of, hey, actually, AoE, like, CC is allowed to be strong in this game.
It's not even just CC, it's everything. Like, you are allowed to feel strong. You're allowed to feel strong right off the bat. It's cool. You can get an ability. It is true of more abilities than not that I look at an ability in this game and I'm so trained from other MMOs that I'm like, well, that can't possibly work as written. And it just does. It's like, no. That's fine. You can just do that. It's cool.
I do feel like I'm getting a brief image of like my champion's life could have been if that game was allowed to succeed.
I mean, if they hadn't have broken it with the day one patch.
Yeah.
I think even then, I understand now that Champions did not understand everything about City of Heroes.
It
Yes.
did not. Jack had very strong opinions about how things should be, and some of those opinions were wrong. Not all of them. Like I don't think he's the devil like a lot of old City of Heroes players do, but some of them were wrong. Okay, yeah, the cash shop was added in 2011 in issue 21, and then like from then until the game's end of life, that's where like new power sets and archetypes and things showed up. So
yeah, I think sorcery may have been in the game. I can't find when that was added, but the science set experimentation was not in the game when it was live.
oh yeah, that was probably one that they were working on. The things like Dark Assault and Street Justice and that, like you had to pay for those back in the day, and now you just get them. You don't have to pay $10 for a single power set.
I mean, you can play all of it for free because the Homecoming server has the official license now.
Yeah, and if you really want to support them, you can try to donate. Good luck with that, though.
I've been trying to figure out how to even do that.
You missed it.
So
You missed the
opened up
window.
Donations today.
The window opened
February.
earlier today and closed within like an hour or two.
God.
So you can't until next month. They're very serious about they set an amount of like, this is how much we need for the coming month, and then they open the window and they accept donations until they have reached that amount, and then they shut it off. They don't want any extra money.
It's so refreshing. In some alternate non-hyper-capitalist universe, this is what games are like. And it's really pleasant.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what if games could just make a sustainable amount of money instead of all the money?
Yeah. But we should probably continue on
Yep.
instead of making this City of Heroes for the rest of the show.
Everspace 2.
This is one of my honorable mentions for the year. This came out in like April, really early in the year, and is an interesting entry into the space exploration genre. It is not trying to be realistic in any way. It's basically taking an action RPG and putting it in space. And I don't mean Diablo.
Unironically love this.
All right.
Like there's various different ship types and sizes you can fly. A variety of RPG-like weapons, and you can level up like your skills and things like that. It's really awesome.
It's very cool.
And it's interesting because Everspace, I mean, it's got a 2 in the name, but it's not very much like the first game. The first game is a roguelite.
Which is why it took me so long to pick this one up, because I was like, what? I didn't super love the first one, actually. It was fine.
It's okay. I don't like it very much.
Yeah.
But I got a chance to play this at the last PAX South. Rest in peace, PAX South. And I enjoyed it. And like, I'll give this a shot. And yeah, they came out this year. And I think it is very good. And it only made honorable mentions because this was a very good year for games.
It's
one of the
fun.
I will say the story is just kind of okay. But one of the interesting things is that you play as one of the like clones from Everspace 1, except cloning is illegal. And the fact that you are very obviously one of the military clones is a problem for you. So you spend a chunk of the game dealing with that.
Yeah, I really like this game because it knows what it's trying to do and what it's not trying to do.
It sure isn't trying to be Elite Dangerous.
Yeah, like it's not trying to be Elite Dangerous. It's not trying to be Star Citizen. And it is so much better because it is not trying to do that.
I mean, I feel like that's often the case with games when they have an unambiguous scope and stick to it. It tends to be a tighter experience.
In this game, are you like, is the is it like isometric above the ship, or are you inside the ship? Like, what's the moment to moment?
You're inside the ship shooting things. You are never outside the ship. All of the
The-
gameplay is inside the ship.
The Descent style of gameplay. Well,
Basically.
Descent was outside the ship, wasn't it?
No.
Well, the camera was outside the ship.
Your camera is still outside the ship. Like it's a third person.
It's
camera.
a third person camera. Okay.
I mean, you could also play Descent as a first person camera. That was a bad idea, but I mean, you could have played it as a first person camera.
Wait, it was a bad idea? Okay, no, wait. I'm not going to do this digression. Getting myself off.
I'm with you, Tam. I didn't know you could play Descent not as a first person game. But whatever.
Alan Wake 2. This is my personal pick for game of the year. This was the top for me. So a couple years ago, I did a deep descent into Remedy's back catalog, and as a studio, they have been trying to blend live action cinematics with gameplay and make them mesh perfectly in every game. Like, to some extent, even Max Payne was trying to do that.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And this is like, it's like you can tell there's this thing that they're really passionate about, and every game gets them a little bit closer. And Alan Wake 2 is the magnum opus. The way that you blend live action and, in-game action that you can control is just amazing. And the story's great. It's told from two different perspectives. Part of the time you spend it as from the point of view of Alan Wake. Part of the time you spend it from an FBI agent, Saga Anderson. The world design is great. It builds fairly seamlessly upon the first game, but also builds seamlessly upon the Remedy shared universe. Like, I would definitely suggest at least watching a playthrough of Alan Wake before diving into Alan Wake 2, but like, also, if you've played Control or if you've played Quantum Break, you were greatly rewarded for that too.
Yeah, I would recommend playing Control before playing this. So this game would be my game of the year if I had played it in 2023. I only just started playing it in the last week or so. I'm not finished yet. But unless something goes completely off the rails between where I am and the end of the game, this absolutely would have been my game of the year. And I did play the remaster of the original Alan Wake immediately before I played this one, and it felt very seamless going from one to the next. I agree, may or may not, depending, on how you feel about some of the gameplay of the first game, want to play it versus watch a playthrough, but absolutely
Alan Wake 1
worthwhile.
has some jank.
It does, but I got through it pretty quickly, and I feel like I was rewarded for that when I started playing this game, because there's absolutely bits and pieces that are lifted directly from the first game.
Well, and the remastered version makes a lot of difference. I had tried to play Alan Wake prior to the remastered version and bounced several times, but the controls are much better in the remastered version, which is sadly only available on Epic Game Store and or the consoles. It's not on Steam. Like, there is a version of Alan Wake on Steam. It's just not the remastered version. That's the other kind of annoyance that I had with Alan Wake 2 is it is a Epic Game Store exclusive because Epic actually published this game. So it is highly unlikely it will make its way to Steam anytime soon.
I don't hate the Epic Game Store like everybody else seems to, so I was perfectly fine with this, and I happened to catch it at a, I guess, sort of New Year's sale, so I bought two, and it was on sale, and it came with a free copy of the remaster, so that's why I played through both of them.
I will say, I am really excited for this game and for the people who played it and enjoyed that whole thing. I was thinking to myself that, like, when a game is continuing directly a story and doing a good job of it, it's super incredible. And it's such a difficult decision, I have to imagine, for, like, the people making the game, because that is definitely hurting the marketability of that game. Because, like, I haven't picked it up because I don't know that I want to go through Alan Wake 1, and I feel like it's probably important that I do that.
Well, the game tries to do a really good job of catching you up on the story and
In musical
revisiting.
form.
Well, so there's that, but also, like, there's a lot of, I mean, because, okay, you're playing this character of Saga Anderson, an FBI agent that doesn't know the story of Alan Wake. So to some extent, you're learning a lot of it through her eyes. But yeah, I mean, like, there's so many little moments that would be meaningless interactions if you didn't play Alan Wake.
And I think that's what I'm getting at is, like, for me, this kind of reminds me of my experience with Psychonauts 2, where I absolutely loved that game, but definitely was recognizing that a lot of my love for that game was recognizing how much the game is calling back to stuff that existed in Psychonauts 1.
I mean, I think a lot of the things that I like about this game, love about this game, are relatively self-contained to this game, but it definitely is incredibly rewarding if you've got familiarity with the previous game and to some extent Control.
Yeah, like, I mean, like, to some extent, like, Alan Wake hit it out of the park immediately. Alan Wake 2 hit it out of the park immediately because I love Audie the janitor. Audie the janitor is one of the best characters ever, and it's a character that crossover between multiple games. So,
but also we just barely touched on this thing that happens in this game that is just maybe one of my all-time favorite experiences in a game. This game it does the thing that Belle was talking about with, blending live action video with a game. But it does it in this just bananas musical number, which you can go and watch the live performance from the Game Awards and get a flavor for that. And if that doesn't make you want to play this game, then maybe you shouldn't play this game, and that's okay. But playing
Alan
through
Wake,
that sequence.
Remedy games have a specific sense of humor, and it's either your thing or it's not your thing. And, like, but it's been the same in all of the games. And I love it. I love it so much.
It's so good. And, like Alan Wake, Control, Alan Wake 2, all of these games have some form of sequence that is blending music with combat in some way. And it was when I played it in Control, the sequence in Control is incredible. It feels so good, and the point that comes in the game, it just is like a victory lap. It feels so excellent. And in the original Alan Wake, that one actually caught me a little bit by surprise, and I really enjoyed it once I realized what was happening. But in Alan Wake 2, it is just perfection. It is not as epic feeling as the ashtray maze, but the way it blends the video, the music, the gameplay, the little touches that you see as you're going through and playing through the sequence, and how it brings that musical number into the world and makes you a part of it. It just was, bananas and incredibly fun, and just the sort of thing where I had a gigantic grin on my face and also was literally yelling, "What the hell is happening?" at my computer.
Yeah, like so this is like a minor thing, and it's there's in this sequence there's this moment where you pick up a flare gun, and the very next musical line is, "Now he's the torch bearer." And it's just like little things like that are just like, there's so much synchronicity between the actions you are taking and this nonsense tapestry that's been playing out in the background.
Oh, it's so they've been so good with that since Max Payne.
That sounds really cool.
Yeah, I highly suggest it. But again, like, in for a penny, in for a pound, like the best experience would be play Alan Wake, play Control, and then play Alan Wake 2. And I would also argue that, like, if you can stomach a failed experiment, Quantum Break is worth playing too, because Quantum Break is this weird scenario where they made a game for Microsoft, and just like Max Payne, they no longer own those characters. So names have changed, but those characters, just like Max Payne is absolutely an Alan Wake, the characters from Quantum Break are absolutely an Alan Wake. They just have slightly different names. Sometimes they're puns on each other. But yeah, like, so the entire Remedy shared universe is amazing, and I will be here on day one for whatever other nonsense they create.
Amen.
Super Mario Wonder.
Yeah. This game is the first like 2D Mario game in years. And boy, it's good. So Mario is no longer in the Mushroom Kingdom. We have moved on to a new setting, mostly because we still needed to have like a kingdom to threaten, and we wanted to have Peach as a playable character, which should be the default assumption going forward. So many different playable characters. They're all fun. I played this game multiplayer the entire way through, and it doesn't have the frustrations that the Mario U series had, where like trying to play multiplayer was more likely to get you frustrated with your friends than like enjoying yourself. There's still some issues that it has, where like you can get dragged along by whoever has the camera control at that moment.
If they decide to run backwards while you are trying to dodge a thing, they can drag you back into the thing you're trying to dodge.
They sure can.
I mean, there's a lot of good stuff about this game. I think one of my favorite things about this game that they did, levels don't have a timer.
Levels don't have a timer is a big change. This game feels like Mario. Again, this is the first game in a long time. I don't think I've ever felt a Mario game that was as informed by the other games in the platforming space around them than this one. Like, they're definitely taking a lot of stuff from a lot of different platformers and like throwing it in and giving it that Mario like polish. And as a result, there are so many ideas on display in this game.
Yeah. One of the things that I think this Super Mario Wonder, like Nintendo is frequently, erroneously, but frequently accused of not really paying attention to the other games going on around them, especially with like Mario games, where it's like, well, even some of the Mario U games and like Mario Odyssey got the like, haven't you seen what people are doing? They're doing so much harder, so much more interesting stuff. Why aren't you? And like Mario Wonder has enough that is very obviously pulled in from other major platformers to make it clear that yes, they are paying attention, and then enough like sheer Nintendo creativity and polish that they're like, also, we are still the best at this. Just in case you may have forgotten, we are still the best at doing this. The stuff that we come up with is absolutely bonkers and incredibly creative. And if it's not difficult to your liking, it's because we didn't intend it to be. Like, we are not in the business of Kaizo mods.
Yeah.
That is not what we do.
There
It is
are
not a flaw
absolutely,
that our games don't lean into that.
yeah, there are
We gave you that
absolutely
game.
some challenging levels that like do crazy stuff, but they are optional and you don't have to do them.
Yeah, I would also say that they're definitely doing that. They've also just got so much, like even more than previous games, a lot more focus on the details of animation. There's a lot more animation occurring at any given moment in this game than I would say basically any other Mario game. It's by far like a good example, and like the focus on details are also interesting. There's an entire sequence where like there's a bunch of piranhas that are singing a song as they're marching around, and they're
Yes.
popping in and out of frame, and they're just singing and like mostly not paying any attention to you. But like
Yeah,
you
they're
can
doing their own
still like you have fireballs, so you can hit them, and then that one stops singing. You can hear that individual piranha plant that was singing, like their voice stops in the chorus.
Yes, much like Alan Wake 2, this is another game with delightful musical numbers that can come out of nowhere and make you say, what is happening?
Yes.
This
It's
is a
like-
remarkably musical game.
It's like
Oh, yeah.
New Bonk City. Like, I remember New Bonk City in Odyssey, where it's like, wow, there's a lot going on visually here. And that's like the entire game.
Like the way that a Goomba will like look up at you and like have a slightly panicked look on his face right before you stomp on his head.
Yeah.
And like try and like make a scurry motion to try and get out of the way. Like so many little details of the world around you responding to the way you're interacting with it. And then yeah, like boy, a bit of spoilers for the ending, but the ending is like it turns into a rhythm game for the final Bowser fight, and it's such a perfect ending to this game.
Yes, the ending is a rock concert.
It's so incredibly charming.
And then for even more bonus, if you do decide to do, absolutely every level and get all of the coins and everything, the final power up you get is them taking all of the sounds in the game and replacing them with their staff, just making like mouth noises into a microphone. It's hilarious.
Oh my.
The other thing that I really want to mention is like the badge system, which basically lets you slot a different power, which kind of fundamentally can change the way Mario moves. So like the first one you get is the floating cat badge, which allows you to like hold down a button and like deploy your big hat as a parachute basically to slow fall. But like this goes up to you have a badge that allows you to have a grappling hook that will like latch onto a wall and like send you with massive amounts of momentum flying towards that wall.
Yeah. Well, and also a lot of the badges give you a movement ability from a previous game. Like one of the badges gives you Super Mario 2 Luigi jump.
One of
Basically.
the badges gives you Super Mario 2 ducking super jump.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's easy to understate, but it's such a clever approach to platformers, especially because so much of modern platformers are about the move set. You've got the moveset. And have you gotten good at executing on the moveset? This is fine, but like anybody playing Hollow Knight, anybody playing Celeste, anybody playing almost any of these games, it's like you've got this ever expanding set of moves which you need to execute on, and it increases the difficulty and complexity of the game. And Mario Wonder basically demonstrates a way to add lots and lots and lots of interesting movement abilities without adding a whole giant weight of cognitive load onto the game, because you can only use one at a time. And they're super transformative. They are individually much more powerful than almost any move except for like the borderline glitchy ones in those other games. But they exist in a space where they can be that strong because you only have the one. And it's really, really cool to see them kind of interpret that ethos in a different way that like nobody else has done.
Up until the very last level, in which they're like, actually, now we'd like you to test every single one of these in a small little section individually designed for it. Which feels very reminiscent to like a Kaizo or Celeste mod, and yeah, it feels really good when you're going through and like, let's explore deeper all of the stuff you can do with this move set. Like each individual set of moves has a whole bunch of deep interactions to it, and we're going to show those off in this one area that requires you to have done a truly tremendous amount of work to get here.
Yeah, like it exists. The super complicated version exists, but isn't considered the default.
The coolest, the most transformative one that I didn't realize you could do, but definitely makes sense, is at one point they have you riding along. There are certain rails that like if you jump into will like zoom Mario as he like hangs along the top of the ceiling.
Yep.
Which, by the way, feels straight out of a couple of Kaizo ROM hacks I've seen. But there's a lot of like, we're going to borrow these interesting ideas from the Kaizo scene and make them more approachable. But in that, you are able to release from the wall and then midair jump back up to the ceiling to re-grab. Feels really cool when you pull it off. But yeah, the bubble power is especially fun. And yeah, like the watching people who are getting good at that and like able to basically run and fly forever just like bubble jumping is really satisfying. I've managed to get 4 bubble jumps in a row. I am not good at this game yet.
Honkai Star Rail.
This was one of my picks. Probably would be my game of the year in worlds where Alan Wake 2 didn't exist. And this was a game that when I first looked at it, I thought, why would I want to play this when Genshin Impact exists? And it completely won me over. And I think, been playing it every single day since I got hooked.
Yeah, this was one of my runner-ups too. It's my daily chill out experience. It's a lot of fun. It's good entertainment for a limited budget because they're pretty generous with this stuff, and the stories are fun. The characters are pretty crazy in fun ways.
I mean, they just gifted everyone a 5-star character who yells at enemies, writes a bunch of equations, and then throws his chalk at them.
Yep.
Okay.
His name is Dr. Ratio. But
yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, it's like, I feel like they've kind of given themselves the freedom to like any kind of interesting character concept or design they can think of. It can somehow fit in one of the many affiliations or whatever in this game, and they just say, yeah, that sounds cool, let's go for it. And it weaves together some very bizarre characters in interesting ways.
Yeah, the character set. No, the individual character design is. I mean, it's still sometimes leaves things to be desired for the female characters, but but the story is very entertaining. If you haven't had a chance to take a look at some of the trailers and animated pieces that they've released to go along with it, some of those are also really entertaining. There's this game and the studio, they're not taking themselves seriously at all.
Yep.
And it makes it really fun to play through. Yeah, I do appreciate that, like, they are relatively generous for this style of game. So you don't have to break the bank to feel like you're keeping up with things. And and now that the game has been out for a bit longer, there's just a lot more side content and story content and things to do. I still am pretty eager to log in every day. They also made it so that your sort of daily chores take almost zero effort. That was a recent change, but it's kind of nice because you can log in and knock that out in a matter of just a couple minutes. And if that's all you want to do for the day, you're still sort of keeping up and getting your free stuff. But it also means that if you have a limited amount of time to play per day, it frees up a lot more of that time to actually play some of the other fun parts of the game. I really enjoy. I've enjoyed a lot of the side quest stories. They're just they can be very quaint. There was a whole quest chain where you were trying to help one of your friends be an influencer and go around telling ghost hunting stories and see how many likes you get. And
that was so fun.
It was really entertaining. And another one where a bunch of little adorable cat creatures got loose on the space station, and then you just make more of them, and your goal is basically to breed them until they look strangely like your friends.
Yeah. I appreciate that events don't really go away. There's a way to play through old events. It's just you miss out on like what they call limited time events, which is usually just some of the gacha currency and money. But if there's anything special like the backgrounds for your phone or wallpapers or whatever, you don't miss out on stuff like that. Plus you still obviously get to experience the story in the event.
That's good.
Yeah, that was a big thing, is that I have been playing it pretty religiously, but there's no real FOMO if I happen to miss something, because all of the major events will always be there. I might miss out on a little bit of the currency or something, but the meat of the event is still in the game. And some of them are really detailed. I mean, one of the early ones was, the museum sim.
Oh, that one was really fun. That's still one of my favorites too.
Yeah, it was just really good. And I appreciate, like, in the last few months, I've dropped Genshin again, and part of it is that this game doesn't ask a lot of me, and for something to check in for a few minutes in the morning before work, or a few minutes at the end of the day after work, and just see some entertaining story and have a little bit of fun gameplay, it's just perfect.
Yeah, I was on this bandwagon for a very, very, very long time. And then I don't remember which patch it was, but they added a ton of new content and I kind of fell behind. And now I've got this wall of content that I've never quite caught up in. But the thing that impressed me the most with this was just that you could tell they'd learned a lot of lessons from Genshin, and they've made the game, I think, better as a result. Like, it is more respecting of your time in general. It doesn't feel like quite as much pressure to do all the things every day, or you'll never, ever, ever catch up or be able to do the latest content. I think it is a great game. I enjoy the turn-based gameplay more than I thought I would.
Yep. I mean, one of the quality of life things that they have that, for your situation is a lot of the events you don't have to be all the way caught up on the story on. You can just enjoy the event, which is also nice, having gone into Genshin and some things were blocked by a really unwieldy amount of content
Yeah,
to have to
that's
play
true.
through.
I think really the only thing in Star Rail that you need to be caught up on to progress when stuff is like the main trailblazing story. And that's not even as long as like some of the event stuff. Usually they kind of have it divided into smaller chunks, I suppose, if you have a bunch, to get through. But that's really the only thing you have to be caught up on.
Yeah, now that we've moved past Space China, I want to catch up so that I can see the new area.
Yeah, I was going to say 2.0 is like a week and a half away, and it looks like it is going to be crazy.
Also, I love Wubbaboos.
Wubbaboos are adorable.
They're great. They get lost easily.
No, I'm stuck on. He did it. He said Wopty Dompty Dom Center like it was the most natural thing in the world.
Okay, we have arrived at the final game in the list. Baldur's Gate 3.
You say the big one like we haven't already recorded a full show.
Yeah, no, we've absolutely recorded a full show, but I mean, this is the one that most like a large number of us chose somewhere, either in a main pick or an honorable mention.
I think it would have been everybody if I had played this game in 2023, it would have been at least an honorable mention. But
Yeah,
it's
an
just
honorable.
barely started.
Yeah, it's an honorable for me. Like, I just made it to Act 3 last night, so...
It was a game of the year for me. I haven't even gotten to Act 3, but oh my goodness, this game is big.
There's a lot going on. Yep.
Yeah.
It's so good.
When I asked for a video game based on Dungeons and Dragons, or even an RPG in general, this is well above anything I would have expected.
Yes. I think I would have I would have struggled to come up with a concept that can really like if you had said, hey, what can you do with a classic, I hate the term CRPG, but here we are. What can you do?
No better term for it.
There's no better term for it. What can you do with a CRPG that hasn't been done or tried that would like really set things apart? And I would have had a really hard time coming up with that. But man, what they have done with characters in Baldur's Gate 3 is inspired.
There's so many characters. Characters that only show up in this one weird edge case that are fully voiced, have their own, like, everything to them. Like, did you know that Hink the bartender has a brother named Honk?
It's the whole thing.
That is a thing that if for whatever reason, Hink the bartender happens to die either accidentally or purposely, like, there's this one place where Honk shows up and has completely different dialogues.
Did you know that the game unfolds wildly different if you are Shadowheart versus Gale versus your own character? Like, because it's not there's brilliant characters throughout the entire thing, and they're super fun, and I really enjoy them, and they definitely lean into the weirdness that you can have in the Forgotten Realms.
Oh yes.
Beyond just like a bunch of humans hanging out doing things. But like, I have never in my life been even slightly tempted to play one of these games as a pre-made character. Because why?
Right.
See, I feel like there is at least
wow.
one previous game that answered that question in a very specific way. Original Sin 2 has wildly different storyline things that unfold if you are a pre-made character.
Yeah. Well, and it's one of those things where I played through that game and did not get to a point, like, it didn't make it apparent to me that, like, hey, you could play this game as this person and it's gonna make a big difference.
Yeah, like the game doesn't, if you start the game as a custom character, this is all basically hidden to you. You will never know about any of it.
Yeah. Whereas, like, you start out character creation, you see a bunch of characters, and you're like, okay, obviously I'm not going to play any of them. And then you play the game.
I'm not going to play any
of
these pre-made builds.
Right. Those are the boring options, right?
And then you play the game and you're like, wait, hold up. What is this like if you play as this person? Like, that's got to be different, right? And boy, is it.
Yeah, like, from what I understand, like, there's characters that you can't even see if you didn't play as a specific person.
Yeah, there's whole story arcs that don't come up.
I feel like one of the things that's going on with this game is this feels like one of the truisms is don't make content people aren't going to see. Like, that's just a thing you hear people talk about in game design, and like, this game is chock full of content.
They didn't freaking care.
Yeah, this game is so chock full of expensive content no one's ever going to see. And it allows you to have this experience that does feel uniquely yours.
Yeah. I mean, it's sort of like the counterpoint to it's the counterpoint to the argument. If you know that people are going to talk about your game, then go nuts. Have the hidden stuff because someone's going to see it. And it doesn't have to be the person playing the game. Like, you don't have to worry about somebody not seeing your playthrough. Like,
someone's going to run into it and people are going to talk. So
exactly.
Well, and I don't think this game could exist from any other developer other than Larian.
That's because all of the other developers that could make this game went out of business.
Well, no, what I mean by this
I don't even think that's true.
Larian is on this journey, has been on a journey. Larian took a bunch of courses in college, trying to figure out what their major was, tried every single genre out there, finally landed on this genre, and then kept diving deeper and deeper into it. And if you follow, the progression from Original Sin to Original Sin 2 to Baldur's Gate, like, there's a clear path that led us here. And without, like, the lessons learned from Original Sin and Original Sin 2, I don't know that this game could have existed.
But this game took a lot of lessons from Original Sin 2, which itself took a lot of lessons from the first game.
They're being experimental in the form in a way that other people doing this aren't. And it's really cool to see.
But I think another piece of this is that they're doing new interesting things, but also the experience of playing this makes me feel like I felt when I played Baldur's Gate 1,000,000 years ago.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, I have that same feeling, even though I know this is a vastly different experience. But in my heart, I feel like I am back in that time playing that game. And that is really great.
And that's kind of a shared thread amongst a lot of the games we've talked about over the last year, is games that feel like you remember playing the game that it's in honor of. Like, I mean, this does feel like my memories of Baldur's Gate 3 or Baldur's Gate 2, but it's not anything like Baldur's Gate 2.
I did try to play Baldur's Gate 2 shortly before this came out. Rather, I tried to play Baldur's Gate 1, having played 2 before. No. The stories in those games hold up. The games themselves,
right?
Not as much.
Yeah.
But, like, our memory of what it was like to play those games is intact in Baldur's Gate 3.
Yeah.
I think Baldur's Gate 3 is the best of them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like I feel like the only one of those earlier games that competes with Baldur's Gate 3 is Planescape.
Yeah.
And it's again because of the characters. Like that was the other game that was incredibly story focused, had a wild cast of characters that you could recruit into your party, and had lots and lots of interactions with. Like that's the one that this honestly makes me like pine for, that this feels like to me, because it's a similar like just gathering these people together and trying to figure out just what the hell is even going on.
This also feels like old immersive Sims, where there are so many different, totally reasonable ways to solve this problem.
Yes.
That I actually do feel like the story I get from this game is going to be different than the story other people get from this game.
Yeah.
Like I'm very impressed at how often you can choose not to kill anybody. Like killing absolutely everybody is always a viable option, but most of the time you cannot, and there's a way to get around it. There's lots and lots of opportunity to use various abilities to if you're not talking to animals, I don't know why you're not talking to animals. If you're not,
Right.
you absolutely should be.
Yeah, like
You should talk to animals and or dead.
All the animals and all the corpses. Talk to them all.
Well, and I re-rolled at some point because I started this when it first came out, and then I got sidetracked, and then I re-rolled and made it to Act 3, and then got sidetracked. So I've not made it all the way through. But on my re-roll, I specifically went for a ranger so that I could have talk to animals because I was missing out too much.
Lots of opportunity if you have shape-shifting abilities. Lots of opportunities to use them to find alternate paths.
Lots of ways to solve combat encounters.
Mm-hmm.
Like even just in the you've got to have a fight, there's a lot of ways to solve your fight problems.
Oh yeah, like the time that I cast Crown of Madness on the boss, and he promptly booted two of the minions into a pit for me before it wore off.
Oh,
it was great.
This does remind me, I should mention, I also love that this game was not afraid to change the rules of 5th edition to make a better game.
Yes.
Yeah, they definitely looked at things and said, like, okay, but how will this work in a video game?
Oh, no one's ever going to use this. Oh, we should fix that.
Nobody ever shoves. Why would anybody ever shove? You should shove.
You should shove.
It's maybe a little too powerful.
Also jump. Jump is also boosted to be way stronger than, the rules ever say it should be.
But it's always sad when one of your party members just can't quite jump as far.
But also, like, it's so much more satisfying combat-wise. Like, I am gonna jump like halfway across the map.
Yeah, it's okay to feel cool in a really straightforward kind of way.
Or items which are way more powerful than they are in 5th edition.
The thing that impressed me the most is, and this is, coming from me who actively hates several BioWare characters, there's not a single character in my party that I don't like.
Yeah, it's incredible.
I may not like them wholeheartedly to where I want to run with them all the time, but I still want to play out all of the dialogue options because I like the character.
Yeah.
It is a feat that they pulled that off with how weird every single character is too. Like, you are going on a journey with some of these characters, and they're cool, they're relatable, they're interesting.
Yeah, like I'm sad that I can't have more than 3 of them in my party at a time because I want them all around.
It is also a game that understands relationships. Like, there's a lot of jokes about how unbelievably horny all the characters in the game are. And yes, I guess that was a bug. Feature, not bug. But like, I feel like the writers of this game have like human intimate interactions in a way that a lot of like even other games that I like a whole lot don't.
Well, yeah, so one of the things that's different in relationships in this game than basically any others is like the end quest, the finale of a relationship isn't like your characters hook up and have sex. That's actually kind of like early on in the whole process.
Yeah, or it's a side thing, but it's not
the focus.
It's not the pinnacle of the arc.
Yes.
And I feel like that, I think that's sort of part of this feels like it was written by people who understand and have had like a variety of different kinds of relationships. Because they're definitely not all healthy. Like it is not 100% wall-to-wall people in healthy relationships. Don't get me wrong. But also they're believable and the sex is used intelligently. Like it is used to say things about characters even in a lot of cases, or specifically not say things about characters in other cases. And like that's not something you see very often in any media, much less video games. They're not afraid of it, but they're also not sophomoric about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I absolutely did pop off when I realized that they got J.K. Simmons to play one of the big bads. I was like, wait, I recognize that voice. And then I saw the character model. I was like, oh, that's why I know this voice. They have digitally brought J.K. Simmons into this game to make me feel bad about myself. There's also something going on in this game where, like, the difficulty curve is crunchy and dependent on choices you make. And if you want to achieve certain things, get ready for some frustration. Because, like, if you're interested in rescuing the Dark Gnomes, wow, that's a terrible fight you're going to have to figure out somehow.
Yep.
Oh,
It
yeah.
was.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, it's supposed to be you're not supposed to do that fight. You don't have to. It's totally optional. But if that's a thing that's worth fighting for, you're gonna be in for a fight. It's not like every encounter is a smooth, even curve that like you're just expected to overcome.
It's a hard fight. It is a reasonably hard fight baseline that you can do an even harder thing with. And there's a few of those. It's like, actually, it turns out that fight's way easier if you sacrifice these people. But maybe you don't want to do that. No one's going to say anything if you don't do that. But you'll know.
I mean, Asterion might give you props.
I will say I would like to play this multiple times, but there's one specific segment of the game that I would probably look for a mod that allows me to skip it. I'm looking at you, Char Olympics.
It's where I'm currently stuck.
I love that dungeon, but it is long.
No, I hated every moment of that. I have a feeling it's going to be a while before we see a game quite as detailed as this game.
Oh, I will say, like, as I was playing through this game, the overriding thought was, I can't believe this game got made.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many moments that are so amazing that most of the player base probably never saw. Like, one specific one that I got to experience on my second time through when I did have Speak to Animals is how super excited all of the bears are that you saved Halcyon. If you go back to the Grove, they're all really excited to see Halcyon again.
There's whole story arcs that I did not realize I could get to, like the whole Evil Druids arc.
Difficult to find one unless you know it's there.
And then if you're a masochist, you can play on honor mode.
You could do this. They just added it.
Sil just successfully completed a playthrough of honor mode.
Is this harder than Tactician?
This is, you have one save game file you have one life.
It's Iron Man mode.
It's Iron Man. Yeah. No saves coming.
Can you play that on not tactician?
I think so.
Okay, I might play that on easy. Maybe. The game does have a weird... I mean, it's still based on Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, so it does have a weird thing going on where the game starts out pretty hard and kind of gets easier.
That's true until Act 3.
Fair. I haven't gotten to Act 3.
Act 3 is when their stuff gets creative.
The conversation seems to be winding down a bit. Any additional thoughts?
2023 was a really good year for games.
Yeah, there's a ton of
True
games that I want to play that I just never got around to playing.
I do feel pretty bad that 2023 was such a good year for the product coming out and such a bad year for the people making them.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, that was our Games of the Year show. Hopefully y'all enjoyed it. Any final thoughts from anybody?
If you missed games in 2023, don't worry. You'll have plenty of time to try them.
Yep.
They're still around, and they're still really good.
And to be honest, like that's the benefit of a lot of the narrative heavy experiences is they're going to remain evergreen because you didn't need a lot of people to play them. Anyway, hopefully you enjoyed the show, and we will be back next week with a normal show and probably 3 weeks worth of pent up topics. So anyway, good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
See ya.